Okay, let's kick off. Hi, Jackie. Thank you for joining me tonight. This is amazing. For those of you listening and who can't see a visual, we have the beautiful Jacque Opie joining me tonight. I'm Rebecca Freeman from Rebecca Freeman Coaching and part of the Real Soul Rebellion. My mission in life is to start a rebellion of no bullshit, all soul, and it is my absolute passion in life to create a team of warriors who face, own, and embrace their truth no matter what. So that is everything I do, and I could not be more excited tonight to bring you Jacque Opie, who is basically who I consider my self-love truth bomb queen. I tell people that you never forget the person who introduces you to Mama Regina and the book Pussy. And for me, that was Jacque. Changed the way I looked at sensuality and sexuality and the divine feminine forever. And I am just so excited to have you online. So thanks for joining us, Jacque.
Such a pleasure, Beck. And, I actually remember the day that I recommended that book for you, and I know exactly where we were. Do you remember?
Not where we were. I do remember the day, though, and having the conversation. Jog my memory.
We were walking back from the beach, and it was at a time when you were really, you were probably at a huge low for yourself. And I remember when I made the recommendation for the book, I think I made the recommendation twice, and the second time you were like, yes, this is it. You were ready to hear it.
Yeah, it was in a real low point in my self-worth. Absolutely. And I can say that reading that book, and if people listening and watching this back have not read or that book or listened to it on audiobooks, go and immediately after listening to this, go and get that book and read it. And then, you can forever remember us as being the ones who introduced you to it. But that book for me gave me a connection with my creative fire, which we'll talk more about tonight, that was the exact thing that I needed to rebuild my self-worth. It was the foundation for my self-worth from that point on. And that was exactly what had been lost amongst all of my, tumultuous, relationship stuff. So it was wicked. It was incredible. So Jacque, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
So in the last 6 months, I've had a massive transformation in what I do, and I seem to be a bit of a shapeshifter. And at different times when you ask me what I do, depending on who I'm speaking to or where I'm at, it's always different, because it really is, for me, the labels that we attach to, well, I'm this or I'm that, I find really, really challenging. And so what I really resonate with is that I'm a woman in the moment, and I'm very much about helping people with where they're at right now. And sometimes that's around intimacy, sometimes it's around self-love, sometimes it's around money, other times it can be around their health. So for me, it's really more like a chameleon than anything else, and putting myself in a box. But what I really love doing is spending time with quality women who are on a journey to really guide and support and help other women grow. And I think that's where we're really at this time in space and this time in the world, for us to be able to do what we do here and really support each other and help one another grow to dizzy, crazy heights, so that we're all just these amazing lit up divine goddess versions of ourselves, means that we can elevate and amplify love on this planet and peace on this planet. And that's really what I stand for. And it doesn't matter to me what form that comes in. It could be in a conversation with a gorgeous woman on a bus that you've never met before, or it could be like this, where you're having a cup of tea in South Australia and I'm having glasses of water in Queensland.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're saying about women supporting women, if we go back to what we were talking about with my journey and you helping me along that, you were one of many women who built me back up to where I am today. And just that is why I'm so passionate about having these conversations and introducing other women who might be sitting at home and feeling a little bit lost to the amazing women that helped me on my journey as well, because, it takes a village. And a good friend of mine said to me, in times of trouble, women don't fight or flight, they actually tend and befriend. So like if you can get your sisters around you in tough times to, you know, build you back up again, it's like amazing. It's wicked. So very excited.
Yeah, and part of that journey is, you know, not to leave men out of this, because I love the energy of men and being around men as well. However, when you have a compliment from a girlfriend, it's so different to a man talking you up. When we have our fellow sisters saying, "My God, I love what you do. You're a freaking amazing woman," it's so different. And energetically, I think it's what we've lacked and missed for so long, is women having the courage to back each other and support each other and let go of any level of competition that just eventually holds all of us back.
Yes, competition. That really has been it, hasn't it? We've been led to believe that we're all competing for a finite something or other, whether it's men or work or, you know, whatever, who's more attractive, who's whatever. It's all been a competition, and now it's, you know, entering. I like to feel like, and that's where I like to sit, is that, you know, there's so much juicy goodness, and we can all have some of it and help each other get more of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, well, so tonight, I'm conscious of your time, so I want to keep moving. But so we're here to talk about sensual self-love. So first of all, I'd like to ask you the question, how do you define just self-love in general? How would you define it?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really love about the work that you do, Rebecca, is you've become so known and vocal about the fact that self-love is not just an external, wow, I look good, and, you know, my mirror image says that everything about me is great. I've got the long eyelashes, I've got beautiful hair, dress the part, and all the external stuff that really, you know, as women, is how we judge each other and how we judge ourselves. That to me is not self-love. That is a sense of hiding behind what's actually going on internally for us. And for me, that self-love is really being able to accept ourselves no matter what stage we're at, whether we're in a ball, crying in a total mess and a total meltdown, loving ourselves in that space, and loving ourselves when we do have the long eyelashes and the hair and the makeup and we feel so fucking gorgeous.
Yes. And then, so if we add sensual into that, for me, I really wanted to bring that aspect into it for a couple of reasons that we'll hopefully talk about over the next 20 minutes. But for me, I see a lot out there of people talking about self-love. And when I look at it, it's in a container of weight loss or changing the way you look or whatever. And you know, I'm somebody who works in the health industry, and I have a background in, you know, exercise and human movement and how the body works. And I'm obviously a really fit and active person. But for me, self-love isn't related to weight loss, and sensual self-love, therefore, also isn't related to your appearance and how externally you are found in a sexual attraction kind of way. So if you were going to define sensual self-love, how would you define that?
Well, the definition of sensuality in that really is, it comes back to a feeling that we have internally to ourselves, because nobody external decides whether we're sensual or not. It's really something that we have internally to ourselves. And so that sensuality for me is a real connection with our sexuality. And it's a real connection with that deep love that we have for ourselves, whether that's, you know, in the day-to-day things that we do, or whether it's when we are in an intimate situation. And that intimacy does not have to be with anybody external. We don't need somebody external to us to validate our sensuality. And when I look at how women have become, you know, and some part of this is to do with the corporate world, and this could very well be a projection, and it could be a total mistruth for some people. For me, that I found when I was working in the corporate industry, that a lot of my sensuality was shut down. And the reason I shut it down is because it didn't feel safe. It didn't feel safe to be a sensual woman. And for me, sensuality is everything about my psyche. And Napoleon Hill talks about it in his book called Think and Grow Rich, and he talks about the power of sex transmutation. And sometimes people totally misunderstand this and think that that's about just fucking, which it's not. It's about how we use sexual energy to be charismatic, to really pull in and attract what we want into our lives. And there's a massive difference between sexuality and sexualization. And I think as a society, we've become so attached to sexualization. You just got to watch videos on, music videos, or watch what we really use in our advertising to understand that we're very overly sexualized. However, we're so challenged with talking about sensuality and sexuality. So on the outside of it, it looks like we're very open about it, but actually we're not. We're so closed off to the conversation of sensuality and being in that magnetism that we've started ignoring the power that we have in that space, especially as women, because it's been unsafe.
Yes, I love everything you've said there. I think for me, one of the reasons I became really passionate about sensual self-love was it was actually a man who I was talking to about my work and the fact that I'd been single for quite a long time. And he said to me, he said to me, Beck, how long has it been since you had sex? And it kind of took me back because I was like, whoa, like, where did that come from? He said, I'm not asking because I'm telling you that you should go and have sex, but I want to know how long it's been since you've been in touch with that energy. He said, your womb is a space of creation and you access your womb through your vagina, your vulva, your clitoris, that space of like amazing energy that builds, and you have the power to access that creative space, not just for making babies or for having sex, but for also driving your work forward or making your personal life that much more magnetic and exciting and vibrant. And that really, for me, shifted that relationship that I had around sensuality and sexuality from being something done for a purpose with another person, or even like with myself, to actually being a tool that I could use in life in general, in all different aspects. So what you've just said then just resonates so strongly with me, and I hope that people watching this back and listening really take that on board, that sensuality and sexuality isn't a purpose-driven thing for pleasure necessarily, but can also be harnessed for all sorts of different things in your life to just increase magnetism and increase energy. I think Lisa Lister talks about it in her book around having ritual around that. And I know Mama Gina definitely does in Pussy, having ritual around connecting with that energy and harnessing it and utilizing it. So that's fabulous.
We're definitely on the same page with that, Rebecca.
It is. And look, and the reason that I think that in society women are scared, like you were saying, in the corporate world, it didn't feel safe to harness that power, is because it is so powerful. So when you meet a woman who is in touch with that power and who harnesses that power, they're very powerful women. They are extremely powerful women.
So much so that we've created really, really nasty words for those women.
Yes.
Like slut or bitch or whore. And all of those words demean that sensuality. And so we cover it up in the hopes that we don't get seen as any of those, because God forbid we should be called any of those ever.
Yeah. And I know I work with a lot of mothers and I know that, you know, once you become a mum, people expect you just to let go of that aspect of yourself. You're not supposed to be sexual anymore because or sensual, because you have little kids now and you're seen in this, like, suddenly you've become the Virgin Mary again and you're all pure and innocent, like, you know, because otherwise what, you're going to corrupt your kids, you know. So for mothers in particular, reclaiming that power they get judged quite a lot, particularly by other mums who don't feel safe around owning that power for themselves. And I think this is something really important to note, that, you know, it's not necessarily men that are, you know, trying to push this back in women. It's women pushing this back in women, and the awareness that needs to come within self around, you know, where you're feeling that that lack within, and that fear and that repression when you're challenged by another woman who's owning that space.
Absolutely. And that comes from the age-old wounds that we have. And you read a lot of Lisa Lister's stuff, and we talk about how we, you know, when we had witch hunts, what women did to each other to save themselves and to save their families was just, it was, phenomenal. And so we've had a culture of dobbing in our sisters and putting each other at the stake.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I used to walk down the street and regularly feel jealous when I saw other women who were obviously confident and standing in their power and probably had access to that sensual and sexual power. And now I found that the more and more and more I work on my own inner sensuality and sexuality and love that and harness that and proudly own that, the jealousy that I used to feel for other women is basically non-existent. Like if I pass another woman walking down the street and she looks $1 million, is radiating, she's got herself held high, she's looking at people in the eye, I'm just like, hey sister, how are you? Like, wow, what's your name? Tell me what you've got going on. Like, I want to know her now. Whereas once upon a time I would have been like projecting all of my wounds onto her and feeling really defensive. Now I'm like opening up my heart space and saying, come at me. I want to share this. I want to swap stories. I want to learn from you, you know, and that as soon as you make that shift and women listening to this, if you can resonate with that jealousy feeling, like please don't feel bad about that, you know, because becoming conscious of that feeling of jealousy and that feeling of pain, and that, you know, whatever that is for you on the inside actually means that you're opening up your heart space to looking at that. And that's that's the first step. And then, because when we look at those feelings instead of hide from them or run from them, then that's when we can transform them. And so quickly you can shift to being another woman on the street looking and feeling that way and connecting and spreading that and encouraging other women to be like that. And that's the power of it. It's so powerful. It's great.
And I think also that feeling, Rebecca, is often a sense of longingness and looking at what's missing for me, if that is what is triggered for us when we see other women who are really successful. And I agree with what you're saying. Consciousness is the most important part of this journey. If we're to become women that are closer, more united and connected with each other, then becoming conscious of those emotions and feelings and checking in with ourselves to say, what's missing for me that this is raised, because it's got nothing to do with the other woman and everything to do with us. It's an opportunity to really self-reflect.
Beautiful. Yes, I totally love that. Now, I've got a question.
Not judge. Different. That's different. Let's not judge ourselves. It's reflect.
Yeah, it's reflecting. Absolutely. And I think that that's something I've come to learn through my own personal journey is, you know, not beating myself up for anything that I have felt or do feel, or that comes back when you're like, I thought I dealt with this. Like, oh my gosh, why is it still here? You know,
I did the work.
And it sounds corny to say it's a gift, but it really is, because whatever, I think Mark Grove says, your mess becomes your message. And so any of that crap that comes up for you, you've got to love it, because it's whatever you learn out of that, you have to give to the next woman who needs to learn that same thing in some way, shape or form. So it's just like sharing the love, really. I wanted to ask you a little bit as well, like we've talked about women owning this stuff in themselves, and towards the end of the call I'll ask you for your your key tips on how to get started in a sensual self-love practice. But coming back to the men not being separate to this, because I know that we had a few men that were interested in listening to this call, how would you encourage men to support the women in their lives to own their sensuality and their sexuality?
That's such a great question, Rebecca. And for me, the first thing is about it being safe for her to do that, you know, and encouraging her to do that, because women are so used to holding back and keeping a lot of that stuff in. We often don't talk about it. I mean, how often do you get onto a live and listen to women talking about their sensuality and their sexuality and really feeling into a deep level of self-love. It's great for guys to say, hey, honey, go for a pedicure, or hey, honey, why don't you go get your hair done? That's one aspect of it, but that's very much the external. So have a conversation with your woman and check in with her. Like, how does she feel about her sensuality? How does she feel about her sexuality? And where is it at for her? And what are the tools that she needs access to, whether that be a woman's community or a connect group that she can tap into, and making it okay for her to go on that journey. And some of the journey is going to be wild, and you'll be going, oh my gosh, what have we unleashed with this?
Yeah.
It's not going to be
just
low.
Pause there. That's really important. This journey is not, society tick approved. Like, it is wild. We're talking about a really primal energy here. Like, when you talk about, like, I think, the latest craze at the moment is talking about the divine masculine and the divine feminine and all the rest of it. But you need to acknowledge in that there's this raw, wild power that when women start going down this path, that comes out, and it can be gnarly in great ways, in mutually beneficial ways as well. Yeah.
And for guys, this can be really scary, because you will watch your woman transform into a new being, or not even a different person, but a new way of being. And the more comfortable you are as a man to watch that and hold the space for her, you do not have to do anything other than hold the space for her and make it safe and make it okay, without ever judging her for how she chooses to express that. Yeah. We open up magazines, and I remember opening a magazine about 2 or 3 years ago, and I was in a doctor's room. Don't judge me for what I was reading. It was a bloody, I don't know, New Idea or something like that. Yeah. And it had photos of women in the same dress, but a different woman, and they were getting women and people to vote who looked better in the dress, who wore it better. And I just thought, how degrading. And so it's not about ever judging her for how she does things. It's just about letting her go on the journey and knowing that you are there to support. There is nothing that you can do to step into her and, yes, encourage her, but this is her path. And no matter how ugly it gets, if you love her, you will absolutely stick through it, because it is worth it. And how do I know that? Because I went on the journey myself. I was a corporate zombie in my zone of business and corporate all the time. And when we went through the shift of me tapping into and connecting into that sensuality and that divine feminine essence, it all sounds romantic. It was rough going. And yet all the time, Craig was in the shadows, holding the space for me, allowing me to be who I needed to be in that journey. And we're now out on the other side. And I can tell you, he'll tell you that everything is better. Our sex is better. The way we communicate with each other is better. The way we argue is even better.
Yeah. That's, I love that, hearing that, because I have the story of not having made it out the other side, going through that journey, and like who I became too much for the man that I was with to handle. And that's, and it took me a long time to forgive myself for that. Like, I felt shame for becoming somebody that he couldn't love anymore, and had to go through that process of then returning to self-love and knowing that, who I am and who I am now that is unleashed is also fucking amazing, right? So, so really, like, for men listening to this, it's about growing with the woman on the journey. And if stuff comes up for you that, makes you feel scared and you feel fearful, it's about you growing into the type of man that can speak up and talk about that, not in a way that makes the woman feel like she needs to repress what's happening with her, but in that you can both communicate what's going on for you and grow into that space together. And like you said, the benefits, sounds like it's a worthwhile journey to go on.
It does. And the other side of that is, when she goes through this shift, she may very well change her circle, and her circle may be changing, her circle of people, and her circle may be changing with her. If as a man you become threatened by the woman that is she is surrounded by, and that comes through an expression that's not healthy for either of you, that's going to bring up some challenges for you. So not only supporting her, but supporting the growth and development of the women around her as well, because the risk, if you don't, is high. The risk of her going, this is too hard and I will stick with my sisterhood. If you support her sisterhood, and know that you're on the side watching this and letting her grow, and she will grow back and closer to you as opposed to growing away from you.
Yeah, beautiful advice. Thank you, Jackie. The other thing I wanted to speak to you about, because I'm just conscious of time, I could talk to you all night, but I know you're a busy lady. For women out there who are also juggling kids, so of many ages. I mean, mine are starting to get into teen years, and I've got friends that have got newborns and all the rest of it. Do you have any advice for mums who are also juggling that additional thing of children amongst exploring this aspect of themselves more, that you'd like to share?
I would, absolutely. One of the things that with some of the clients that I've worked with through the book that I wrote, Passion Rituals, I share in the book the opportunity for mums to really get serious about their sensuality and about their connection to themselves. And what we are doing as parents above anything else is teaching our kids with everything that we do. So if we're into really loving ourselves, honestly being comfortable with the human being that we are, and connecting with our power, whether that's sensual power, sexual power, intelligent power, it doesn't matter. We're teaching our children what is okay and what is not. And they're going to learn from the rest of the world as well. So if your kids are learning about sensuality and sexuality outside of the home, I can tell you now the way that they're learning is through pornography or through what their friends know. So as a parent, I would absolutely ask you to take responsibility and be accountable for your child's development when it comes to that. So what you teach them in the few years that you have with your children becomes absolutely critical. You know, I remember a friend saying to me one day, she said, I'm so scared to have sex at home because what if the kids hear me? And I said to her, you know, as a child growing up, I grew up in a very abusive home, and I would have given anything to hear my parents making love as opposed to beating each other up. So when we look at the environment that we're creating for our children, that self-love and that love bubble that we create as a family unit is so, so important. And my advice is never, ever, ever be ashamed of the love that you have for yourself or the love that you have for a partner, whether it's a long-term or a short-term partner, because what you teach your kids through that experience is absolutely huge. And talk to them about it. Let them know that it's okay, and you teach them the parameters around that. You've got the best opportunity as a parent to do that, to create and make it safe for your children to be great lovers and people in relationships later on. Otherwise, they're going to be spending the money on the counselling, and they should send you the bill.
Perfect. I totally agree. And I can reiterate that what you've said in our household. Sex isn't a special conversation. It's not something that we have as a separate conversation to conversations that we have in everyday life. Like, sex comes up in conversation like anything would come up in conversation. Yeah. And when we're talking about body image and, you know, like if I come home and I'm fried from working today, and my kids are like, what do you need? And how can I help you have that? And likewise, they will feel comfortable coming home saying, I'm not feeling that great, or this happened to me. And it's become this really open, not a special conversation. I can remember having to go and seek my parents out to have a specific conversation around, you know, somebody said something to me that made me feel bad, and I would have bottled it up for days, and it had been eating away at me, and sex was taboo. You didn't talk about it and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And the thing I love in my family is my journey along the lines of building up my own self-love not as a special, I'm going to have a bubble bath, treat yourself, self-love practice, but self-love being something that is a daily practice. It's part of who I am. Is that means conversations around sexuality, sensuality, caring for yourself, your feelings, your emotional well-being. It's just normal conversation. It's not a special conversation. It's just something we discuss. And,
yeah, absolutely.
So to wrap up, Jackie, because we're out of time.
We are definitely. They're waiting online for me on another call.
Okay. Give me one quick tip for somebody who feels like right now, after listening to this conversation, that their sensual or otherwise self-love is low. Where do you recommend they start?
Right. So hopefully this is not too much of a shock for people online. What my recommendation is that you go and find yourself a beautifully quiet private space to be in. Lay down, put your hand on your pussy or your penis, close your eyes, and really connect in to the energy that is circulating through your body, and ask your pussy or your penis what you should do next. And there's a couple of ways that you can tackle this. You can either do this, tackle it, that's funny. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can do this from a really wanting to know and understanding and learning and growing, or you can do it going, this is a load of crap. And I want to tell you a really quick story. A year and a half ago, I did exactly this. I went through the process and I said, guide me, tell me what to do next. And the message I got was, clear your diary, you're going to be traveling. And so I did that. I cleared my diary from the 19th of November until the middle of January. I cleared my diary. I cancelled all my appointments. And about a week and a half later, after doing this, I got a phone call from South Africa to say that my mum was very ill. I flew to South Africa. She passed away 4 weeks later, and I had nothing in my diary to shift. So I believe this because I've had the personal experience, and that's just one of many, many, many examples of where this has worked for me. And I honestly believe in sensual intelligence, sexual intelligence and sensual intelligence. And these are the messages that are there waiting for us. So if you want to know what your next practice is around self-love, go and do a meditation, hand on heart, hand on pussy or penis, and go and ask the question.
Sensual energy, some of the strongest out there. I love it. Thank you so much, Jackie, for your time tonight. I am sure that the listeners are just going to get so much out of that conversation. You are just one of my favourite humans in the whole world.
And you mine, Rebecca. Love you, honey.
So much. Thank you for listening, everybody. Enjoy your evening. If you want to find out more about Jackie, I will tag her in all the things. And if you are looking for me, it's at Rebecca Freeman Coaching or RebeccaFreemanCoaching.com online. Love you all. Thank you, Jackie. Good night, everyone.